Hello and good day, everyone. For today, the topic that I will be presenting is about the role of biosecurity in swine herd health and productivity. So let me start off with sharing with you some of our experience in the Philippines in the last few years. When I used to work for Zoetis, when ASF started to be detected in the Philippines middle of 2019, we did biosecurity audit to determine the preparedness of the commercial farms in the Philippines against African swine fever. We used this tool to assess how protected the farms are, and this tool was developed by Evans Van Odyne in the UK, and it looked at different key areas that are potential risks of entry of African swine fever virus. In all, for half of 2019 to early 2020, we managed to do audits on around 198 farms with a total sow level back then of around 129,000 sows. So in all, comparing this to the industry back then, probably this will be around 25% of the total commercial farms in the Philippines. Unfortunately, our findings showed that 87% of the farms that we go to have low biosecurity levels. Only 11.6 have medium biosecurity levels, and only 2 out of 198 or 1.4% have very high biosecurity levels that will ensure that they will have a fighting chance against the entry of African swine fever. And for each of those farms, there are at least 4 high-risk areas that are present. In all those farms, the top risks were: one, the demarcation between clean and dirty areas. 66% of the farms don't have clear segregation between high health and dirty areas. 128 don't have downtime for visitors. So anyone who visits the farm, they'll just let them in. And 119 out of 198 farms are very close to the other farms, less than 1 kilometer away from the other farms, making those farms vulnerable to ASF entry. Unfortunately, 2 years after conducting these audits, when we went back and looked at these farms, majority of the low biosecurity farms have either completely depopulated or have been directly hit by African swine fever. In the medium farms, two-thirds of them were affected by ASF, but none of the high biosecurity farms had problems with ASF. So meaning, despite the spread of African swine fever in the Philippines, they managed to continue with their business and continue producing pigs for the industry. I initially shared this information to give you an idea of how a whole industry might look like in terms of how they view biosecurity. So since then, since we saw these findings, we invested on educating the industry on how important biosecurity is and how biosecurity has been effective in preventing African swine fever entry into their herds. Now, going on to my topic for this day, I have divided my presentation into 5 different chapters. First, I just level up the understanding on biosecurity. Second, I will share with you the impact of biosecurity on herd health and viability. Third, I will show you the effects of biosecurity on herd performance. Fourth, I will share with you some of the challenges and the strategies for effective biosecurity implementation. And fifth, I will share what other countries are doing to level up the biosecurity in their swine farms. Now, going on to my presentation, starting off with the first subtopic. Many of you are familiar with the different tools that we use to control any herd health issues or any herd challenges. So when presented with problems in the farm, particularly productivity problems or productivity that may have been caused by infectious causes, we normally look into our production records and see which specific parameter is affected by the problem. And then we use diagnostics to determine what the problem is. Now, depending on the review, the approach approach might be controlling the problem through changes in management, correcting feed flow, doing better husbandry, adjusting environment management, or controlling how replacement animals go into the farm. Or if there are effective vaccines against the particular problem, we may employ including those vaccines in the vaccination program and in the medication program. However, if we are not able to set up or maintain good biosecurity in the farm, then those problems or those issues might keep coming back again. So the frequency of those challenges will be much more if biosecurity is not set up and maintained well. When biosecurity is set up, the risk for introduction of new diseases is significantly reduced and significantly controlled. So that's how important biosecurity is as a tool in managing and maintaining our swine farms herd health. So what is biosecurity? Basically, any practice to protect the herds from the entry and spread of infectious agents and the disease they bring forms part of the biosecurity program within a herd. It is basically divided into two different subsections. One is external biosecurity. Most people refer to biosecurity when they discuss biosecurity is just purely preventing entry of disease into swine herd. Well, strictly speaking, that's just external biosecurity or preventing external threats from going into the farm. Well, the other half should be limiting the spread of the disease within the herd through proper management, movement of people, setup of biosecurity infrastructure in the farm. Both of these aspects of biosecurity are important. We have to prevent entry, and if enters in, the internal biosecurity will take control and prevent the spread of that particular pathogen or disease from spreading wildly within the herd. Whatever or however you implement biosecurity or whatever protocols you set up for biosecurity, it is guided by two basic fundamental principles. And the first principle is segregation. This could be actual barriers or SOPs or temporal barriers that you set up to break the direct entry of anything that goes from the dirty area going into the clean area. So that's the first basic fundamental principle. There should be a separation. Could be physical barrier like establishing walls around the pig areas or internal fences to segregate the dirty area from the clean area within the farm. It involves putting different signages on the different entrances, and it involves wearing or changing clothes for the people that are going into, including potentially wearing personal protective equipments or PPEs. So those are the physical barriers to segregate the clean and the dirty area. The other way of segregating is really procedural. So you set up the farm to limit the entry points and then establishing a particular entrance where there are SOPs that anyone who's going into the farm should follow. That includes probably first signing in when you get in the farm so that the farm will know whenever someone visits into the farm. Next could involve probably spraying of alcohols on the hands, followed by shower, change of clothes. When those people visiting the farm, including laborers or the owners of the farm, would want to go to the clean area, they have to follow those entry procedures. It also includes personal hygiene. One of the things that we ask our people to do is just to basically simply cut their nails every day or as often as possible, because when they handle food in their houses from the market, there's a chance that viruses or bacteria might persist in the dirty nails, and we would want that to happen. So that's what's a good example of the personal hygiene mentioned here. So movement of personnel also. Many farms have moved to providing different colors of uniforms for different sections of the farm, so it will be easily noticed if people from the farrowing goes to the breeding or goes to the nursery. We limit those movement of the people people in the farm too. An important aspect of also procedural methods or we employed in the farm is the disposal of all the wastes, including disposal of mortalities. So disposal of dead pigs, we would bag them and then put them in one entrance and then someone else will go pick them up. We don't allow our staff handling the pigs to go through the disposal area because that exposes them to the risk of the pathogens that are in the disposal area of mortalities. And then one of the things that we find important is to do trainings and retrainings to farm personnel because from the time we initially do audits or recommendations of adjustments in the farm, compliance will be high, but after 6 months, there will be compliance fatigue, compliance will go down, so would need to go in and do retraining. Another example of segregation is temporal. So this is time reduction or increasing the time of the downtime between visits or entries or any staff that went into vacation or day offs. They have to at least do downtime prior to going in to the pig area. That's basically increasing the duration between potential contact time points to different pathogens. And the next important fundamental principle of biosecurity is cleaning and disinfection. So there's two important areas where this has to be done. So once segregation is implemented, you know the clean area, you should identify the dirty area, and anything that will cross from the dirty area to the clean area should be cleaned and should be properly disinfected to be sure that they are not bringing in pathogens into the clean area. But also, cleaning and disinfection is important to be routinely done within the clean area to reduce the microbes or the bacteria or viruses that are gradually building up within the clean area through time. So cleaning and disinfection should be implemented inside and on the critical control points or potential entries of anything from the dirty area to the clean area. I mentioned a while ago critical control points. These are basically those entry points that could be the potential areas for entry, different pathogens. So when the clean and dirty areas are well identified, well demarcated, then the only possible entry point of the pathogens could be to the entry points of the personnel, to the entry points of the supplies, to the entry points of feeds, materials that will be used for maintenance, and more importantly, pest control. So first is segregation. Second is controlling those entries or the critical control points and implementing procedures on those critical control points. One of the lessons that we have learned for preventing entry of African swine fever in our farms is really employing just one way to control the entry in each critical point that won't be effective. And then during the pandemic, I read an article published about employing Swiss cheese model. The Swiss cheese model for COVID-19 prevention employs different control measure for one particular critical control point of entry with the assumption that no one single approach can 100% prevent the entry of a pathogen or virus. But if you line up different repeated controls, one of the others might cover up for the deficiency of the latter. So basically lining up increase different control points or at least 3 different ways to control the entry or 3 different procedures that the people bringing in things need to go through increases the chance of the efficacy of those procedures. And then also it is important that biosecurity protocols be refined further based on the epidemiology of the target disease. So later I'll show examples of how different farms in the US or different veterinarians in the US have prevented entry of PRRS, particularly using air filtration, because that's how they've seen ASF get into the farm. That's why they're using it. That's why they're focused on controlling the airborne infection of that particular virus. And that approach is particularly what I meant in this slide, in that it should be refined further depending on the target pathogen that you want to prevent to gain entry into your operation. So moving on to the next subtopic on the impact of biosecurity on herd health and viability. This is a paper that I'm sharing with you on a publication by the group of Dr. Scott D from Pipestone in the US, where they looked into one big system with over 380,000 sows with multiple breeding herds. They grouped those farms depending on how they have implemented what they call next generation biosecurity, particularly tailored to prevent the entry of porcine reproductive and respiratory syndrome virus. They did classify them at the initial onset of the study depending on the compliant, those that are employing NGB or the next generation biosecurity, and those that were not implementing NGB religiously, and monitored those farms for a total of 2 years. So on the top, the table will show 56 herds with a total of 313,000 sows that implemented the NGB, the next generation biosecurity. And the table below listed the farms, the locations, the size of the farm of those that were not implementing next generation biosecurity. And for those 2 years, they computed for the PRRS incidence risk for each group. And the risk for those farms that were implementing NGB was 8.9%. So there's still a risk, but it's low. While those farms that did not implement the next generation biosecurity had a first incidence risk of 40%. And the difference between those that were not implementing and those that implemented is statistically significant. So breaks are happening higher in those farms that did not implement the next generation biosecurity. Basically, the impact of biosecurity is to reduce the incidence of disease outbreaks into the herd. So you implement biosecurity to have less outbreaks in the herd. And the second impact is if you have good internal biosecurity, if a particular pathogen comes into the farm, the spread won't be as rapid as compared to if you do not have effective biosecurity programs in place. In terms of specific cost of the implementation, the cost benefit of implementation of biosecurity. Definitely, it will be dependent on the cost of the disease that you are trying to prevent. And the next couple of slides just highlighted a study in a big system where they looked at within their whole system, what is the cost of these particular diseases, swine influenza, PRRS, and mycoplasma, just on finishing pigs in their operation. What they found out was for mycoplasma, the difference in terms of losses is negligible. So it's not that big if it's only mycoplasma that's getting into the herd. If it's PRRS, then it starts to go up because there's an impact already on ADG or average daily gain. So the cost of PRS in finishing pigs is around 5.5 US dollars per finishing pig. For swine influenza, it's about 3.2 US dollars. So that's when finishing pigs are infected with or have outbreaks with mycoplasma alone, PRRS alone, or swine influenza alone. What's more devastating is if these diseases comes into your farm in pairs. So there's a synergistic impact when of those pathogens go into the farm. So if PRS and Hemhayo both gains access to your operation and causes clinical signs, the cost shoots up to 9.6 US dollars. If it's PRS and swine influenza, it's 10.4. If it's swine influenza and mycoplasma, it's 10 US dollars per pig. So what does this data tell you? If you're able to not prevent, at least the objective of biosecurity should be to limit the entry of pathogens, because if different pathogens are able to gain a free access into your herd, then the impact will be more devastating. So In the finishing pigs, they looked at the impact of the diseases in terms of morbidity rates. So lower morbidity rates, lower number of pigs that will get sick. When there's less pigs that will get sick, there will be lower deaths or lower mortality rates. And then when there's less morbidity, less pigs die, the overall herd health and the overall herd performance of the farm improves. Computing for the economic benefits really is a bit challenging to us because it's like an insurance policy where you spend on something to prevent another thing from happening. But basically, looking at those papers, the experiences, we can summarize and compute the impact of the economic benefits of biosecurity release towards herd health preservation. So minimizing disease loss, reducing treatment costs when there's less morbidities, and maintaining productivity of our herd. So moving on to the effects of biosecurity on swine herd performance, I have decided to look at the farms that I'm working with and look for farms that are more or less comparable but with differences on how they implement biosecurity or they execute biosecurity. So here I cited farms A and B. These two farms are part of the same system, so just one company. So genetics wise, genetics of both farm A and farm B are the same. Nutrition wise, the feeds of both farm A and B are the same. Both farms started off as PRS mycoplasma negative, but eventually, to time, Farm A broke with Mycoplasma and Farm A broke with PRS. So now, for the last few years, Farm A is, I classify them as a farm with a conventional health status. Farm B, on the other hand, manages to maintain PRS out of their herd. So it's Mycoplasma positive, but PRRS negative. Now, what are the differences between these two farms? For Farm A, our farm laborer, our farm staff, goes home every day. So basically, they would go in the farm, shower, wear their farm uniform, work for a day, and then go home at night. The location also of Farm A is a bit challenging because Farm A is near a highway. So a lot of trucks move along the highway, which is just what 20 meters from our peak areas after the fence. Farm B is a bit more isolated. In Farm B, our staff are following 26 days continuous work and then 4 to 5 days day off. And once they come back, they would need to do at least 48-hour downtime at the site before they can go into the peaks. So those are the differences between these two farms. Herd-wise, almost the same size, but you can see here the performance difference for those two farms in the year 2022. For Farm B, which is able to implement better biosecurity protocols, the performance in different parameters are significantly better than Farm A. And this went on until this year. That farm is continuously performing better than Farm A. So where does Farm B, despite having very similar facilities and everything, excel more or improve more or performing better than Farm A? First is in the total born alive. For the whole year, our total born alive for Farm B is 12. So it's 0.18 piglet per liter better. And then in terms of alive, that's where the difference goes up to 0.43 because we have less stillborn pigs in that farm. So PRS causes that. So we've prevented it by pushing PRS out. Weaning weight. There's half kilo difference on weaning weight of the pigs. So approximately similar lactating days or days on sow for the piglets, but there's half kilo improvement on Farm B. Farrowing rate, we have 3 percentage points advantage for the whole year. Although I must say Farm A is still performing well at 86%, but Farm B does 89% for the whole year. We have less pre-weaning mortality, 3.8 versus 5.5. We have less post-weaning mortality. This is nursery until finishing, 2%. Similar farrowing index, an improvement of 1.3 pigs on the wind per sow per year. We have significantly better ADG, and this is one thing that has been consistent throughout the years. The ADG of the PRS negative site is difficult for us in the conventional health farm to achieve. There's 67 grams a day difference, and that spells a whole lot of money if you're considering the amount of pigs that these farms would be marketing every month, every year. There's difference in terms of farm efficiency because at the same or similar growing days, we would have better market weights for farm beef. And the cost per pig per month is 7 pesos lower for farm B. So basically, farm B, just employing biosecurity and keeping PRRS away from the herd, is doing much better than farm A. So if we summarize where farm B, we saw an improvement in growth rates. We're seeing improvement in feed conversion rate because pigs are healthier and pigs are growing better. And also, we see enhanced reproductive performance. So keeping PRRS out, we have less incidences of abortions, less stillbirth per liter, and less number of weak piglets in the farrowing. So these performance parameters have been improved by just maintaining and executing good biosecurity protocols for the whole year. And the last part is on the impact on the need for antibiotics. Of course, if there's less pigs that are getting sick, then you just need less antibiotics to treat them. And overall, with less intervention, less times of our staff going into the farm to treat pigs, then we're improving animal welfare overall. So we know how biosecurity is important now, but why did when we do an audit, a lot of farms still looks like they did not invest on improving biosecurity. And the reasons are basically the cost of the infrastructure and the cost of maintaining that infrastructure. So it's very understandable for small backyard farms to have that. But for commercial farms, when we were talking to them early on in the ASF breaks, unfortunately, during that time, farms are selling pigs lower than the production cost. So basically, farms don't have money to invest on the infrastructure at that time. So that's a bit too late. When they know that they have a problem, they don't have the budget to invest on the infrastructure. That's why a lot of them really did not move. But when 2021 came, 2021 for us in the Philippines is the best year for swine production. Whoever had pigs back then earned twice than what they spent in the farm. A lot of farms gradually invested in improving the infrastructure and how they do biosecurity in their farm. So, to me, back then, the number one issue on adapting biosecurity is really the cost. Before ASF, they didn't bother spending on that because they can control whatever problems somewhat with vaccination and medication. But when a pathogen without a vaccine came in, then that's when they realized that they should have invested prior to that. The second biggest barrier to adoption is really the lack of knowledge on the science. A lot of people think that if they just do disinfection, then they will prevent the entry of pathogens. And that's unfortunate. It's also very common to see small farms putting a lot of agricultural lime on the floors in the hopes that the lime will prevent. It does. And then they will put foot baths, putting in disinfectants that are acidic in nature. So what will happen if you step on the lime, which is very basic, and then step on a foot bath, which is acidic? So basically, both just nullifies the effect of each. So remember, there's a pH range that's effective against ASF, but if you don't have enough knowledge on the pH of your disinfectants and just uses a lot of agricultural lime, then that's negating the effect of each of that effect. And that's what I meant on the lack of knowledge on the science of disinfection. And one thing that most farms really forget is the chance of reinfection or recontamination of the facilities. Intensive cleaning, intensive disinfection of the pig areas really would push down the level of contamination in that particular pig area. However, if you don't close the facility, if you don't do bird proofing, if you don't do put doors to prevent other people or other animals, domestic animals or pests, then before you know it, after cleaning, the facilities could have been reinfected or recontaminated. And when you put in pigs, just count 2 weeks and then problems will happen again. So those are the key experiences that I have, why I say that most farms or some of the farms who are not implementing biosecurity well enough are lacking the knowledge on the science of biosecurity. And the last common barriers is the labor. During the initial onset of ASF, it's very difficult to teach and let laborers follow biosecurity protocols. When we limited their access outside, we saw people climbing off the fences just to buy cigarettes or just to not minding that what they were doing puts the farms at risk. So that's a very, very big challenge. However, throughout the years, when they saw that their friends from the other farms lost their job or their livelihood when the farm got infected, then compliance improved, but much is still to be desired about how the typical laborers in the farm follows biosecurity protocols. Sometimes you would just catch them if you visit them by surprise. They will be doing things that you have told them the last visit that you did not to do. They'll just basically do whatever is comfortable to them. So those are the three biggest barriers to adoption of good biosecurity program within the farm. Now, how have we tried to combat that? Then definitely we do training. So for some of my farms, I would request some of the suppliers to do comprehensive trainings on biosecurity, assigning different companies to train our people regularly on a quarterly or semi-annual basis. In the big farms that I have, we assign specific biosecurity compliance officer. Basically, his job is just to ensure things are done right. All people follow the biosecurity protocols. All entrances are diluting the disinfectants well, and all buildings are properly cleaned before disinfection and other things. But basically, those are the key jobs of the biosecurity compliance officer. And then we do continuous monitoring on how they are doing cleaning by using ATP monitoring, ATP machines. We would also put now on most of my farms CCTVs at the entrances to see if they are following the protocols that we have agreed on. But basically, yeah, the challenges that we have identified is labor. So we have the biggest approach that we do to ensure biosecurity is well implemented is on monitoring compliance of the people within the farm. So what are the future directions and innovations in swine biosecurity? How are other people doing it? One of the things that are being done is to integrate new technologies in monitoring biosecurity. So they're using sensor technologies for early warning entrance to the farms. And the picture of the slide that I showed here is from Dr. Polyeski of the Swine Veterinary Center. In most of their farms, they're doing geofencing through using GPS. Any people approaching the farm with digital gadgets, they will be notified if they're breaching through the geofence. They have to properly be identified or applied to go into the farm. The trucks that deliver pigs or deliver feeds or deliver any supplies have GPS, so they would know where those trucks went through prior to entry in the farm. And then they're starting to use AI in real-time monitoring of the CCTV cameras. So if someone went into the farm not following the protocol, a particular recording of that incident will be sent to someone, and that someone will look into the so the AI will pick up the breach of biosecurity protocol. The AI will send it to a person in charge of monitoring biosecurity. He will be in charge of reviewing if there is really a breach on the protocol, and then use that video clip as evidence to either call the attention or reprimand the person who did something that's out of the protocol. So this is what's being done in the US in the light of the severe PRS outbreaks that they've been experiencing in the last 2 years. In some operations, they are moving towards air filtration of the breeding farms. So I mentioned earlier that some are going this far to prevent the entry of ASF. And to them, it's a proven technology that they have used before for their boar stud farms. And those boar stud farms have been still high health, still PRS negative. And they're implementing the technology, scaling it up to put air filtration in their sow farms. So basically, the cost benefit of air filtration, according to Dr. Clayton, is really particularly beneficial in preventing the entry of PRRS on their breeding herds. So that's one thing that's also done. To me, one of the things that I have adopted is really including the biosecurity plan with the discussions with the engineers who are designing our expansion farms. So what used to happen before was the engineers, depending on the pig flow plan, will decide how the farm would look like and build the farm, and then eventually putting in biosecurity control points after the farm is built. Now, what I'm trying to do for my farms who are building new sites, developing new sites, is from the planning stage. I would sit down with the engineers, the architects, the people who will manage the farm and plan how the pig movement will be, how the staff movement will be, where the supplies will come in. So those biosecurity control points are already included in the master plan of the farm that will be developed. So it will not be just an add-on. It will be part of the plan. So when we build the farm, and we're building a couple right now, all the biosecurity protocols will form part of the plan, and it will be included in the construction. So this master plan that I'm showing here is just an example where uh, the farm wanted to build another 1,000 sow level farrow to finish farm. So we have to segregate the people, the production site. We have to build an access road around the farm. We have to um, get quotations and include feed silos, automatic feed delivery systems into the building to reduce the entry points of potential contamination. We have to plan mortality pickup points near each building, so that's where the people will put the mortalities or their trash, and then our mortality truck will just go around the farm and pick them up either at the end of the day or twice. Then before lunch and then before afternoon, so they would not be waiting in those disposal areas for so long. And we've designed those disposal areas to be at least contained, no restricted access by pests, restricted access by birds, and restricted contaminations. And we went to a point where we also planned how the water will flow. So we have internal drainage system, external drainage system, internal fencing, external fencing. Um, and that cost us really money. But if we're successful in building a farm that's really set up to be biosecure, then that expense will easily be taken over or paid for by the performance improvements, by the continuity of productivity of. So that's the end of my presentation. I just want to highlight three conclusions. First is really biosecurity is very important. To me as a veterinarian who was trained in school to treat diseases, after over 25 years of experience, definitely I would say that biosecurity should be an important part of the toolbox for managing herd health of farms. Discussions on biosecurity, how to prevent entry, should always form part of the discussions when we're talking to farmers on how to maintain productivity and profitability of our herds. And biosecurity, as I've showed in one of my real life examples, in one of the systems that I'm working with, it's really key to improving productivity. So Farm A and Farm B, Farm A is not performing bad actually. If you look at the production performance I've showed, they are still better than the average performance of the farms in the Philippines. But basically, it cannot compete with a PRS negative farm in Farm B. So biosecurity helps farms be more productive by keeping away diseases. And last is really with all the viruses and pathogens that's threatening our production system, to maintain the viability or the sustainability of our farms, definitely we have to invest on biosecurity, and we have to keep improving the way we do biosecurity in our farms, because that's the only way to sustain the viability of the farm, to maintain our productivity, the farm's productivity. So with that, thank you very much. And I think I'll just show the last slide because I think this is very powerful. For all of you who are managing herds or own farms, uh, the future of your herd is in your hand, and it can only be done if you're implementing good biosecurity. So thank you very much and have a good day.